A very warm welcome to all our listeners and viewers to As You Are. I am Lisa Boleyn, and Whit Stewart and I are extremely excited to welcome Atena from the magical creator of Path to Wellness onto our show today. So, Atena, over to you. Introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
Thank you so much for having me, of course. So yeah, like Lisa said, my name is Atena. I created Path to Wellness, I would say about 5 years ago, and it's been a path. It's been a journey, that's for sure. Um, well, a lot of people don't know this, but I was born and raised in Romania. That's where my entire life happened. And I moved to the States when I was 18. I wanted to go to school there. I went to college there. And funnily enough, I wanted to be a surgeon because I was obsessed with Grey's Anatomy. And I was just like, you know what? This seems fun. Like, I want to be like all the doctors on Grey's Anatomy. So I actually went to school. When my mom heard that, she kind of freaked, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, a few years into it, like I was doing the pre-med route. I went to NYU when I was doing that. And a few years into that, I was like, oh, this is not my path. It felt very heavy and very like I don't know, just the competition aspect of it wasn't my vibe. But somehow I made my way back to health, and what I do now is I'm a health coach. So I work with women who are dealing with burnout and fatigue. That is my niche, so to speak, but that is what I love, love, love to do. Um, like I said, I'm a health coach. I am also an FDNP, which is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, which is a mouthful, but basically it means that I run functional diagnostics and functional labs for my clients, and I'm able to help with the supplement part as well. But also, I'm in training to be an emotional release practitioner. So I kind of just combine everything like the physical, the emotional, and the energetic parts of healing to help women that are in burnout.
That sounds amazing and beautiful. And what a really fascinating path that you have taken aspects from all of the things that really light you up. It's incredible. I'm going to ask you a little bit about your own experiences. Is your niche or your specialization something that's happened because you've experienced that yourself, burnout and fatigue?
I did, but that's not where it started for me. It's a 10-year long journey, but I'm gonna try to keep it short. For me, it started when I was about 20. I was at school and I woke up one day and my entire back and the front of my legs were covered in hives. Like just it was really, really bad. And honestly scary to go from one day of like not having any symptoms to just bam, the next day it all just happened. Um, Scary though it was, I knew what was happening because I had seen my mom go through it her entire life. She had had chronic hives herself. And, you know, seeing her go through that and seeing her never get any answer from doctors, I kind of knew what was coming for me. But I still went that route. So I went to the doctors. I got that same answer. Nothing's wrong. I wasn't allergic to anything. My labs were all normal. And I went the conventional route in the sense that they gave me pills, antihistamines, which are just like the allergy medication that we take when we have allergic reactions. And, it worked for a while until I got to a point where I was taking five a day. And it's still like, even with five a day, I was still itching. And just to backtrack a little bit, in case people don't know, hives are just like these like red bumps that come on your skin and they are itchy as hell. Like it is just, it's like you can't focus on anything because you're always like scratching. And it's like being in social situations, it's also like just so frustrating because people are like, why are you why are you doing that? Like it's just weird. But yeah, that's where it started for me. And hindsight is 2020. But looking back, I can see all of the things that were like leading me to these symptoms. I was in college, and like most college students, I was in sleeping nights. We were partying, there was alcohol. I was also for a while taking Adderall to help with like schoolwork. And I also had the emotional aspect of this because yeah, I left for the States when I was 18, but for 2 years I couldn't go back home because of some visa issues. So that was really, really stressful. It was the first time that I had left home, and I had to just be by myself for 2 years and not be able to go back home. So much stress that was coming from all of that, but I couldn't see it at the time. That's how usually it happens. You don't see it. Um, but yeah, I went. This is a whole path of me like eventually getting to a point where it was so bad that I had to really snap myself out of it and be like, okay, something has to change. And I found health coaching around this time because I was like doing my own research and trying to figure out what's working, what's not. I found health coaching and I was like, cool, this is perfect. This is what I want to do. And down this rabbit hole, I ended up finding functional medicine, which is it kind of the focus is on looking at the root cause of the issue rather than the conventional medicine, which is like, okay, you have a symptom, here's something for that symptom. So what I did is I worked with a functional doctor because I discovered that I had candida, I had parasites, and I had dysbiosis, which is just an imbalance in the gut bacteria. But during that 3-month protocol, I had lost 12 pounds in 6 weeks. I could barely get up from the couch. I was the brain fog, like I couldn't focus. It was so, so bad. And when I finished that protocol, I had been so restricted from a dietary point because I wasn't allowed to eat a lot of things that I just binge ate for like 2 weeks. And that kind of started a process of 2, 3 years when I would have these cycles of like eating healthy for a couple months and then binge eating. And that's also when it all started this like I saw it as laziness because after 1 p.m. my eyes would just like I couldn't keep my eyes open. And, as an entrepreneur and business owner, that is very hard because you're like, oh, I have so many things that I want to do and accomplish, but I can't do it because I can't keep my eyes open. I can't focus. So eventually discovered that I have what a lot of practitioners are calling adrenal fatigue. And yeah, so burnout fatigue was definitely part of my journey, but that's not how it started. It was just one of the stops, so to say, on my journey.
That is huge. What an incredible health journey. And yeah, it's really fascinating. I've had hives and yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, it's a
I
nightmare.
have not, and I don't want.
You
I
don't. You
wouldn't,
don't have hives.
not at all.
So, Atena, what did you do from there? Like, what happened next? I'm sort of like, Groot with your story.
Yeah.
I want to know. I want to know.
Okay, so what happened next? Well, at this point, I was still in the States. And again, looking back is really when things become very clear for me. But for me, being in the States was a stressor all on its own, even though like I fit in. Like I had friends, I was in a relationship. I had like the house of my dreams and all of that. But, this always brings me back to Brene Brown. And she said, like, fitting in versus belonging, two very different things. And that's what I was doing. I was fitting in. So I was making myself smaller in a way to be able to fit into these different groups and situations. So I was there. I was in a 5-year relationship, which there were aspects of it which weren't very nurturing for me. There was a lot of triggering that was happening, and a lot of stress that came from that. So I figured out eventually that after again just beating myself up against the wall because things weren't working, I figured out that there was an emotional aspect of things that I wasn't looking at because, I knew obviously I had so much knowledge. Like I knew what to eat, I knew when to sleep, I knew how to move my body, I knew all of these things. And yet finding myself in these cycles of eating healthy for a month, going full on binge for another month. And I was like, okay, what's going on? Like something's got to give. And look, again, I'm so happy that this happened to me because it really help me understand how I can better help my clients. But I had to look at the emotional aspect, and there was a lot. And I'm sure that a lot of women can resonate with this, but there were patterns of I'm not good enough. There was a lot of perfectionism that was just crippling to the point of like, I can't move. I don't know what to do with myself. And there was a lot of self-judgment and being so critical with myself that it was just like, it's hard to live with a person that's like that. But when that person's in your head, it's so bad. And, we don't, a lot of times in healing, especially when you go even the functional medicine route, nobody asks you about this. Nobody asks you like, hey, how do you talk to yourself? Or how's your trauma? Like, how was your childhood? Nobody asks you that. And that was when things really shifted for me because and this kind of coincided with the moment that I came back to Bucharest because I came back 3 years ago. And I found this training for neo-emotional release, which is a technique built by David Manning from Germany. Really, really amazing and transformative. And as I went through my training, a lot of things came up, like things with my father, with my mother, with so much, with my stepdad, so many things. And being able to start to work on those, and to really be like, whoa, like this is where a lot of things are coming from. We hear it a lot in the self-healing space and self-development space, but until you actually experience it yourself, it's just like jibber jabber and it goes in one ear, it comes out the other. But yeah, so I really went into the emotional work. And somehow along the way, also the spiritual part of my healing also came into place because yeah, I think that once you connect with yourself and with your body, like once you connect with your body at that physical level, it kind of just flows automatically that you start to connect to that inner wisdom within you, that like intuition. You start to like realize, wait a minute, like there's so much about me. I'm not just like a bag of bones and meat that have like, oh, like my minerals are imbalanced. It's not just that. Like, yeah, that's important, of course, but there's also another aspect. So that's why I'm like so adamant about bringing these together, because I worked a lot of times with people just on the physical side where we did the labs, the supplements, the eating, and just something was missing. Like like my clients weren't making the changes that they wanted to make because they just kept falling back into the same pattern. So yeah, everything that happened to me really brought me to where I am, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah, that's pretty much how it all went down.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I love it's a beautiful story about the holistic kind of nature of us, that we as humans, we're a whole being, and we're not just, oh, well, I am a heart surgeon and I will operate on your heart, without thinking about, well, what else does it affect? And then also the energy of the heart. It's yeah, your journey has kind of shown you all of those pieces. It's almost like a little puzzle that's Atena, and that you can now share those gifts with the world. But I have a question about if a client comes to you. I mean, obviously they can come to you for many different reasons, or they might be exploring one aspect of themselves. How do you kind of, there's obviously other things that you recognize. How do you go about sort of, yeah, gifting that to the to the person that's come to you? They're like, oh, I'm really tired, and my minerals might need balancing, but yet you discover all of these other things. What's that process like for you?
Well, that process took a long time to really like make it into what it is today. But basically what I do is, most people that come into my world, they come into my world because they're burnt out and fatigued. So we start off with that. And what I usually recommend is starting slow. Because when you're fatigued, when you're burnt out, things can become very overwhelming very fast. So something that is really new to my practice is this 6-week program that I'm actually launching in February. And It's kind of like this introduction into the world where we start with, understanding how our symptoms are actually messages from our body and what they're trying to tell us. Because a huge part of burnout, like you can fix all the minerals and you can fix the gut and the adrenals, but until you realize that your actions in some way or another, whether it be thoughts or actual things that you've been doing, have brought you to this place, not a lot of change can happen. And I'm not saying that from the perspective of you're to blame. No, I'm saying that from the perspective of taking full accountability for everything in your life that has brought you to where you are. Because one of like my number one philosophy, I think, is the fact that being accountable for our health is just the best thing that we can do in terms of our healing. Once you realize I'm in the driver's seat and nobody else, that's when things really shift. So in this 6-week program, that is basically what I'm seeking to do, but also bringing in nervous system regulation tools, because a lot of times when we're fatigued or burnt out, the nervous system is dysregulated. So it can be in a state of hypoarousal, so not enough arousal, which if you're in this world, you probably have seen or heard about like this functional freeze, which is this state where you're like, life is overwhelming but you're stuck. You feel like you can't move. Maybe you're doom scrolling or whatever it is. It can like manifest in different ways, or even hyper arousal when we've become so used to the stress and the like da 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 always go 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 that it becomes familiar and we don't know how to leave that place. So nervous system regulation is absolutely key when it comes to this. And also, some supplements here and there, because a lot of times, there are some physical things that are happening that need our attention. The goal with the program is to kind of like get out of this deep dark cave of burnout and to at least start to see the light. Obviously, we would love for you to fully come out, but sometimes it's important to remember these imbalances you've acquired them over a period of years, if not maybe decades. So it might take a little bit more time. But after that is the program that I've like run for the past year or two, which is a 4-month program where we actually dive into the labs. So we do a hair tissue mineral analysis, which is you just send your hair to a lab and they tell you everything you need to know about your minerals and your heavy metals. And that is very, very important because minerals are the building blocks of everything. So if we remember our biology, a little bit like our biology classes, energy is ATP. Like that's something that's created in our cell. And without the minerals for it, we can't make energy. So it's very important that these are in balance. So we do that. We do even more targeted supplementation with like specific things for opening up drainage protocols, which drainage pathways, you can think of them as kind of like the sewage system in your body. They're in charge of like just taking things out and moving them so that they can be eliminated. And if there's a part that's stuck, just like it would be in your house, for example, if there's a blockage somewhere, you're not gonna have a good time. So doing all of those things and figuring those things out is very, very important. But in this 4-month process, we're also diving even deeper into the emotional part. This is where we bring the neo-emotional release techniques, because it does require at least a few months of like being consistent with this and doing this so that we can actually start to see results, and also really diving into the like energetic and more like magical, I like to call it, side of healing, which I just think is so important. It just makes everything a lot easier and more flowy and more fun and more connected, and I think it's very, very important. Yeah, that's the path that I've created for my clients. And then afterwards, of course, if there are still symptoms, which again, I always like to emphasize, if they are, that's fine. If it's decades of imbalances that have happened, to expect them to be solved in 6 months or less is oftentimes not really the case. But after that, there's advanced testing that I do. I do the GI map to look at the gut bacteria. I do the Dutch test to look at hormones and really like go even further and really, really like get to what's causing it. But you have to build into it, or otherwise it's too much at once, and you might end up in a situation where you like pay for something and then don't follow through with it, and that's the last thing that I want for my clients and for anyone that's healing.
And can we go back to the magical side? Sorry, all the scientific side and all of that is obviously so important, and I'm very interested in. And then you said like, and the magical spiritual
Yeah.
connected side, and I was like, oh yes, please. So
Honestly, that's my favorite part too. So
yeah, and I know it really lights you up as well. So I would love to hear a bit about how that's integrated into, the
course.
process in some of your workshops and
um
in your private coaching.
So the magical side can look different from person to person. But I always say it comes down to the feeling of it, because at least for me, and if you guys have a different take on it, I would love to hear it. But when I think of magic, I think of like there's possibility there. There's some sort of like unlimited aspect of it, and even not follow the standard rule path, whatever aspect to it. So it's this part of like wildness and stepping into that wild woman kind of archetype that is part of what magic is to me. But the thing that I have found in terms of like when I speak to women about this is 9 out of 10 or even 10 out of 10, their eyes just sparkle. The moment you're like, there's magic in the process, and it's like ding, 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 like, oh, I don't want it. And I can talk about this forever, but I'm not, so when we say magic, I think the first and foremost thing is the connection to the body is the gateway to this, because basically what you're doing is you're tapping into this incredible and unlimited, so vast knowledge and wisdom that you have within you. And the way that our society is structured, it's not about that. It's quite the contrary. It's mostly about how do we disconnect you from that? Like, here's social media, here's entertainment, here's the fear in the news, whatever it is, to just like snip that up and like cut you off from, some might call it source or your most authentic self, just basically what lives within you and has this insane and incredible amount of wisdom. So once you do that, what I have found, and we do this with the neo-emotional release, is for sure the gateway to it, to start to really pay attention to the sensations that are in your body, ask questions like, what are you trying to tell me? And just kind of, instead of this one-way conversation with your body, and now becomes a two-way street. So now you're starting to build this connection, really, and to come back into your body. But once you do that, you might start to understand more about your intuitive side and start to be more conscious of that and to want to explore it a little bit more. One way in which that has happened for me is, with tarot, a lot of it has happened with me. Like, I just love doing it. It's such a practice that I love to bring, and I do see it as part of my healing because it allows me to connect with my intuition. A lot of times we think tarot and we're thinking about people that just will do a random reading for us and ask for money. Like, that's not what this is about. It's about like connecting with what you're seeing in front of you in that card and being like, okay, what does this tell me? Not necessarily what I read in the book about tarot, but what does this tell me? Like, what's my intuition? So then you start to play with that. Another aspect that I found that is really, really fun, and again, women just, we all love this, is doing moon rituals. So what do I mean by that? It doesn't have to be anything like a lot of people imagine, like you're outside butt naked and you're howling at the moon. Sure, it can be.
It's also good.
Like,
That's amazing.
Whatever toots your horn, like I'm all in for that. If I had a yard, I would probably do that. But
exactly, none of us have yards. We live in
But what I'm talking more about is, for new moons, because they're beginnings, like setting an intention on the new moon. For full moons, it's about releasing and figuring out, okay, maybe I have this limiting belief that has been on my mind a lot. How do I release it? And part of our humanity and how we are as human beings is our brain understands very well when we are doing something physical. to put into like the physical side the things that are like more abstract or esoteric. So if it's like burning something, like writing it on a piece of paper and burning it, you know, that kind of gesture, it kind of tells the brain, okay, you know, we're releasing, we're doing that. But when you're doing the moon rituals too, something that I absolutely love is it always brings you back to your own cyclical nature, which women, I think now we're becoming more and more aware of it, but in the past, like, ugh, we're not connected to it. You know, we're expected to work on this 24-hour clock just like men do, because men, they do have a 24-hour hormonal cycle, but women, we have 28 days. 28 days in which, or something along those lines, but in which we go through different phases. You know, to be expected to work and be in the same way for each of these days is so, it's just not in line with our nature, with who we are. And it's definitely one of the main causes of burnout, because we're expected to work the exact same way, especially when you're in a 9 to 5. You're expected to show up the same way every single day. It doesn't matter that you're on your period when you're supposed to, like, you know, rest and reflect on things. No, you're expected to just go, go, go. So the moon rituals, even though maybe like for some it might be too woo, but if just being in line with that and understanding like the moon has a cycle and so do we, and using that to come back into alignment with our own cycle, I think that is just beautiful. And again, it brings that magic. And when you do this, what I have found is routines become ritual, discipline becomes devotion. And even though at their core, they're kind of very similar, the energetics behind them are so, so different. And, you know, when you approach like your routine with like, I have to check off brushing my teeth and going to the gym and all of that, like that becomes very robotic and also very like almost like a masculine energy that you're approaching it from. But when it becomes a ritual and you're like, maybe lighting a candle. It can be something that simple. Like you just light a candle and maybe put some music on and make it into a more like, I don't know, flowy and magical moment that just shifts immediately. And also like the discipline to devotion, like when you realize that inner wisdom that you have and the power that you have and how amazing of a being you are, all of a sudden it takes the discipline of like, I have to eat healthy and do that because my body is a temple and all of that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But when you start to become devoted to your body because you understand, not fully, because I don't think we can get that, but you understand its complexity and its magic and its beauty, oh, that just shifts everything, and just things become way more simple for you to do, in terms of changing your habits and changing your life, which is, you know, anybody that comes to work with me invariably has to change something in their lives. So that's what I found, that the magical side of it all really makes this change easier, more fun, more flowy. And isn't that what it's all about? Like, we shouldn't have to like force ourselves into doing something all the time. It can be easy. We don't have to make it hard.
I love yeah, the fun aspect for me, because I also feel in our world that we have a disconnect to fun, and that ritual can be fun and enjoyable and intentional and fill yourself with joy and excitement, which, you know, a lot of the things in our world now, like you said, it disconnects us or it numbs us, and we kind of lose that connection even to ourselves, but also with others, because sharing those experiences with others, even if you're not in the same space, but knowing that you've got these friends who are doing a moon ritual with you, you know, like that kind of connection, it's beautiful and so glorious to hear you speak to that. Just before we move on to something else, there are probably a lot of people who don't know what neo-emotional release is. Could you just give us a little kind of lowdown on that one, please?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So neo-emotional release is a technique that I use to guide my clients through somatic and energetic techniques, somatic being relating to the body. So the idea is to identify and release stored emotions, unhealed trauma, things like that, in a way in which we can kind of recreate the relationship with that emotion. In this process, we use a breathing technique. We use visualization. We use touch as well, if available. A lot of my sessions are via Zoom, so I just guide the client to, maybe place your hand on your heart or place your hand on the area where there's pain, to facilitate this emotional healing. And in this process, you're also able to regulate your nervous system. There's also movement involved to move the energy. The idea behind it is that emotion is energy in motion. So when there's repressed or unhealed emotions, what they will do is they will remain stuck in the body. And if you're looking at it from a quantum perspective, which I do, there's this idea that every emotion has a frequency. So, and every one of our organs also has a frequency. It just resonates at a frequency. So this is why, for example, the liver is associated with anger. So when there's a lot of repressed anger and unhealed anger, it has the tendency to live in the liver and to cause issues. This is why I think it's so important to do all of this, and do this holistic approach, because you can approach the liver from the perspective of, I'm just going to give you supplements to help you and things to just help move things along. But if we're not dealing with that repressed anger, maybe we'll feel better for a while, but then it's going to come back because the emotion is still stuck there. So that's emotional release, and it's truly it's a very transformative process. And sometimes it can be a release. What people maybe have seen online is our videos of just people like crying a lot or screaming or just having these emotional releases. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. It can be more gentle and more regulating. It just depends from client to client. I never poke and prod, it's always about what the client is ready to have brought up and dealt with and looked at.
Amazing. Thank you. That's good. If people are wanting to get in touch with you and how do they do that? What's the best way of kind of?
So I'm on Instagram at Path to Swellness. I also can give you guys some links as to the wait list for the 6-week program, which, like I said, I'm launching in February. And there's also I also have this free resource for people. They can take a free burnout quiz. A lot of times we don't realize, but burnout is not a one size fits all. There's different types of burnout, and a lot of times, we might have a mix of different types, but I think it's important to realize, this is where it's stemming from. This is where my imbalances are stemming from, and to then be able to focus specifically on that aspect. And we can put it in the show notes for the links. But the main is I'm on Instagram, Path to Swellness.
And just a little, yeah, sorry, you go.
Oh no, and you do one-to-one sessions as well, correct?
So I'm in 2025, my goal is to move more towards group coaching, just because one, I am an avid course taker myself. I will take whatever course I can find because I love to learn.
We're smiling and laughing because
Guilty.
everyone in the room,
Yep.
quote unquote, is
Exactly. I know you guys know. But yeah, I've found in my own personal experience that the most transformative experiences that I've had have been in a group container. Just because, I think we're used to thinking that whatever I'm going through, I'm by myself, I'm alone. But in reality, so many of us are going through the exact same things and use the exact same words even to describe what we're going through. So when you're in a group container, there's a lot more transformation that can happen just because you see yourself reflected in other people, and there's more space for aha moments. But I still do take one-on-one coaching clients. It's just that the whole group is I'm very excited to see all the transformation there, and to actually bring women together and have them not feel so alone, because burnout can really be a very lonely path. Family doesn't understand what's wrong. Even partners might not understand, friends, and they might be like, just get up and drink some coffee and you'll be fine. But it's not that easy, and it can be very isolating. So having a group of women to help you go through this, I think it's very, very transformative.
That sounds exciting. Community is amazing. There's
Yeah.
so much
And
value.
nowadays in like social media era, we're so like disconnected, and I think we're really craving community more than anything. So
Mhm.
that's what I hope to create. And the vision is at one point to have an online space where um everyone that has gone through my programs can come together and meet and chat and exchange questions and experiences, and really have it be a community where they can help support each other.
Sounds
Amazing.
beautiful.
Thank you so much, Atena.
Thank you for having me. That was awesome.
Absolute pleasure. And we look forward to um, next week's episode. But if anybody wants to get in touch with Atena, you can check out all her links in the show notes underneath. And hopefully you're not listening to this after February, but if you are, I'm sure if you get in touch with Atena, she will point you in the right direction. Find her on Insta. And I just want to thank you all for listening and coming to this space as you are.